well.
And just to remind everyone, we only have like 4 or 5 minutes, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'll be quick. At the Missing Link, I proposed and implemented the transition we made in 1994 from a mutual benefit corporation to a cooperative corporation. And at the Missing Link, it's fairly non-hierarchical in its operating structure. There's no general manager or executive director. We do have department heads like a parts buyer or a controller. But all employees are members of the co-op. All members are members of the board of directors, which is our decision-making body. And all members receive the same hourly wage. And the size has been about 20 people since, plus or minus since I started. A few good things I can say about worker-owned businesses. They tend to minimize the dehumanizing aspects of employer-employee relationship. I don't know if you've ever witnessed the summary dismissal of your friends at work, but I would say it's not a common feature of the call. So having to choose between losing your job and doing something unethical or just plain stupid that your boss wants you to do is generally not a feature of work. The workers are owners, and as such, they exert more control over their own workplace than they could as employees. Secondly, workers with initiative may have greater opportunities in a co-op than in a traditional business to make changes or chart a new course for the company, even when their initiative is outside their usual realm in the company. So if we had a member who wasn't in charge of the repair department who said, well, we really need to expand and make, lease a new space, our repair shop over there. By the way, we should be selling used bikes and we should be renting bikes. And he was able to convince people to go ahead and make that expansion. And often in a worker-owned business, there are those opportunities for you to get into that kind of process where you've got an idea and you can follow it through. And it can be very beneficial for your company's growth. Okay, so now a couple of negative aspects. And as Joe touched on this a little bit on some of the things I'll repeat he said as advantages and disadvantages of worker-owned businesses. It can be difficult, often very difficult to discipline against poor workplace performance, or difficult to hold members in positions of responsibility accountable for their actions. Why is this? Because members are reluctant to confront and discipline other members. Few people enjoy criticizing other people, and nobody wants the finger pointed back at them. So you've done away with the summary dismissals that you've experienced in a regular business, but now you have a new problem of being stuck with people that can take a really long time to get rid of. Secondly, the personality of workers tends to play a bigger role in decision making, particularly in a non-hierarchical call, such as the Missing Link. People are frequently suspicious of the motivations of their co-owners and make decisions based on the personality of the proponent, not on the merits of the idea. I'm not saying this is unique to co-ops, but it just tends to be a more pervasive problem versus other businesses. When this particular kind of problem is directed against members who have initiative and are trying to make improvements, the result is often burnout, resignation, because they're always fighting against this. Finally, I think there's a tendency in any organization, I can tell all agree with me, that gets kind of bureaucratic over time. And it can be a particular problem for co-ops. Coworkers will block proposed changes because they like the way things are. And having a lot of voices in the mix, you've got X number of people who are now owners and decision makers, it can slow your process down, your decision-making process. And you can have a lot of sort of company inertia because of your internal divisions. You can't actually move forward and make critical decisions for your business. I've seen many instances in that Missing Link where small factions have blocked what the majority wants, have most people want to go in a particular direction. If you've got a certain minority, then they can go off that direction. So what are you going to do given these kinds of problems? So I'd recommend considering, Joe mentioned this, consider various models for peer review from the outset of the business. Encourage a culture of accountability and transparency. Expect people you've entrusted with responsibility to be transparent in their work and hold them accountable. To the extent that you objectify and measure what people are bringing to the company, then I think that you'll minimize the role personality plays in this that you make. Ask yourselves, based on your industry, the complexity of your business, how much and what kind of hierarchy of the workplace you want to have. And what kind of hierarchy would make your business effective, profitable, and good for the workers. I've found in my own business that when there's less hierarchy, your business can drift without direction. There's no core leaders. And it's been a problem at the shop that when we have leaders, it's great. We've got like 5, 6 people who are really out there, making some changes and moving the company forward. In the absence of those people, there's no hierarchy that says, oh, well, the executive director is in charge of doing this, or general managers role. And lastly, look at the decision-making structures that you come up with. Anticipate the ability of the minority factions to dominate the business. What subgroup of worker owners do you want to make? What kind of decisions? What level of approval for those kinds of decisions? Should it be majority, 2/3, consensus? You got to really nail those things down in the beginning, so there's that clarity. And I think it's a challenge to make this sort of thing work, whether you've got 20 people like we do, or 50 or 80 people. I know what the size of someone in ours right now. 80?
It's almost 60.
60.
Triple Helix is about 20 right now.
So, but I think it's worth it. You got any questions? I'll answer.
I'd actually like to ask all the speakers in this following section if they would like to make themselves available. Would they make themselves available outside this meeting in any way you feel possible, just so we can keep going and or not make sure according to your wishes.
Yeah, part of the call is supporting other people. We're thinking about the same thing. It's all good.
Thank you, Larry. Jasmine Brown or Stanley Wu, Dan or Stanley Wu. You guys can fight for it because you're right next to each other. Oh, Stanley.
It's been a while since I've been on a large crowd like this. I would actually never before, so I'm a little nervous.
Picture us naked in a hot tub.
I hope that wasn't recorded. So the worker-owned cooperative that I was a part of, there were 65 members, and I'll try to be really brief, but I just want to echo a lot of the issues that Mark brought up. If you're going to start a worker-owned cooperative, you're going to encounter every single one of those issues. Minority factions, power struggles, and dynamics that don't necessarily represent a democratic system or consensus in terms of ideas and what popular belief is. You'll find that there will be personalities that tend to take over and can guide and influence how decisions are made. That's a major issue. Firing people or evaluating the worth and weight that people are, dragging or pushing is also something that seems to be a challenge for worker-owned collectives and these sorts of issues. And I also want to echo that it's the solution. It's kind of an exciting time right now, I think, to be starting to work on collective action. I think in the 70s, it was mentioned a little bit earlier, there was kind of an idealism that people were rebelling from the system and they wanted to restructure and redefine the way that business and their social life were conducted. And so they started these various movements, and a lot of them failed. But I feel like the worker-owned cooperative idea is an insurance policy now. And there's a lot of resources around to draw from to be able to take a collective or an idea of what we want to go now. There's a lot of examples around. We encourage everybody to go and try and do as much research as possible and to interview other collectives, talk and speak, and just have an understanding of how other cooperatives work and what works and what doesn't work for them. Because there's a lot of people doing something very similar to what you guys are also doing. One of the few things that seem to be a necessity, especially as I listen to problems from other worker cooperatives, one of the really important aspects is to have as much clarity as possible at the very beginning. That is decisions about, are you majority or is it consensus decision making? What happens when there's profit? What happens when there's no profit in terms of sharing it? Have a very clear metric with how you can evaluate work performances and have a very clear understanding of what the standards are. Because what will happen is as these issues, like maybe somebody's not holding the weight, as these issues start to creep up, you're going to want to have a really firm foundation that you can stand on in order to make fast and good decisions. Because at the same time, it's a social experiment and a different way of living in a way. It's also a business that needs to survive. And it's kind of disheartening to hear that 1 out of 2 new businesses fail. I can only imagine that numbers greater worker-owned cooperatives. So just briefly, as much clarity as possible at the very beginning is one of the most important pieces that I've seen. Also drawn up in terms of your guys' shared values. That's something that's also extraordinarily important because that provides context with which a lot of these bylaws and things are applied. I guess that's all I need to say right now.
Thank you, Stanley.